Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor Thomas Goss with a special feature about the music and orchestration technique of one of the great lost composers of the 20th century, Lili Boulanger. For everyone out there who's been waiting for a detailed orchestration lesson, here it is, with a vengeance. As a regular presenter on New Zealand National Radio's concert channel, I occasionally showcase the lives and music of the great composers. This week, it was my honor to present a program about Lili Boulanger, covering her short, spectacularly creative life. The audio is up on the National Radio website. I've got a link in the info below, so you should go check it out before they take it down in 2 weeks. Here was a composer who was phenomenally gifted and precocious, but suffered from a chronic health condition that gradually became terminal, ending her life at a mere 24 years of age. But in the time that she was given, she composed several hours worth of exquisitely crafted, devastatingly emotional music. And she became the first woman in the 115-year history of the Paris Conservatoire to win the Prix de Rome. There's something otherworldly, even saint-like, about Lili and her music. Because of her condition, almost all of her time was spent either trying to get back on her feet, or composing as much as she could possibly accomplish until the next breakdown. She gave every bit of what she had to her music, up to the very last month of her life, dictating her last work from her deathbed. And yet, what emerges in her music is not morbidity or self-pity, but enormous joy in life, alongside a dignity that embraces all of humanity's sorrows. As I was working on the script, I explored Lili Boulanger's music very thoroughly, and I've come to the conclusion that she's the missing leg of a triangle that includes Debussy and Ravel. Each of these composers had a close relationship with Gabriel Fauré. In a sense, they are his musical godchildren. When I hear Lili's music alongside that of Debussy and Ravel, I see why both of those composers rejected the term impressionist. Her greatest works resonate with theirs, but have an earthy wisdom and fervent spirituality that is entirely unique. When I hear all three composers together, I feel where the heart of their music lies, in a way that I don't when Boulanger is absent. So I recommend that you search YouTube and listen to everything you can by her. One of her greatest works, one of the greatest choral works of the 20th century in my opinion, is the Old Buddhist Prayer. The score is available on IMSLP, and there are a couple of recordings of the work on YouTube as well. I recommend that you download the PDF and score read to the recording. Though it's a choral work, you'll see that Boulanger sets the chorus as part of the orchestral texture, rather than making the orchestra into a backup ensemble. But before you do all that, here's an orchestration lesson for you, a series of things to look out for before you go through the score on your own. Let's start with the inner title page of the score, where her publisher lists the orchestra. As you can see, it's fairly large, with triple winds and 4 trombones. For some reason, the 3 trumpets have been left off the list. What you're looking at here is about a 70 to 80 piece orchestra, at least if you want balanced strings. Notice the sarrusophone. This was a contrabass double reed instrument that was used by French composers in place of the contrabassoon from the late 19th century to the early 20th. The percussion is fairly standard, with timpani, cymbals, and bass drum, plus a celesta and 2 harps. Below this, the composer cautions that the rhythm shouldn't be strict. She wants the 3 pickup notes that start each phrase to have a bit of rubato emphasis, but not so much that it actually affects the tempo. It's a subtle point, but if the conductor follows this direction, then the music really comes to life. That basic phrase is quite interesting in itself, based on a simple whole tone scale walking down halfway and then coming back. The harmonic structure is also quite fascinating. The first 2 chords are a simple C fifth, followed by a B flat minor 13 chord, a very dark chocolatey jazz chord. This represents the motion of a parallel fifth, which is used all over this piece for its exotic sound. The G at the top of the C fifth is the common melodic tone here. As the 13th note of the chord, it becomes a good stepping off point for the whole tone scale. When we put the two together, we can see how effective it is to drag the pickup notes slightly going into the change. It really sets up that harmonic change emotionally. Now let's look at the first page of the score. The tempo and meter are very telling in how this is to be a solemn work with grand, deliberate gestures. 3/2 time, with 46 to 52 beats per minute on the half note. This could just as easily have been scored in 3/4 time, but that might cause the performers to rush, especially on the downbeat part of the phrase. In 3/2 time, each of the first three words has the value of a firm, well-stated quarter note. It's a psychological distinction, but one that reveals Boulanger's high level of craft. At the start, the first harp is tuned to A flat, even though the piece is in C minor. This gives it the D flat it needs in the second bar. The chords are to be played without arpeggiation, doubling the strings. This means that the harp is going to be barely audible, the merest sense of pluck in front of the held tone of each bar of string pad. It's one of those subtle orchestration techniques that you really can't hear, but if you take it out, then there's a noticeable difference. The clarinets and horns double the altos and basses for the first episode. Notice the balance here. The orchestral melody is at mezzo forte, while the voices are singing at piano. Boulanger doesn't want the orchestra to support the singers. She wants the tone of the singers to blend into the orchestra. The first bassoon and sarrusophone trade off playing the bottom Cs and B flats, but from a distance, just evening the tone of the double basses slightly. Piano to the bass's mezzo forte. Finally, another subtle touch. The third horn doubles the second violins, emphasizing the other common tone of middle C in the B flat minor 13th chord. The horn immediately backs off and blends out of the picture, but it gives a slight edge of tension and menace to the chord change. At rehearsal mark 1, the sopranos and tenors enter. Here we see one of Boulanger's quirks. She had a habit of overlapping melodic ideas, having one phrase dovetail into the next, more so than other composers of her time. The music is marked mouths closed. She wants the singers to hum the line. This creates a mysterious tone when blended with solo flute and bassoon. Notice how the strings drop to pianissimo here, so that the delicate texture of the melody stands out without having to get loud. We see that the strings maintain a general level of pianissimo, with just a little hairpin swell around the B-flat minor 13 chords. Over the same passage, the harp starts to alternate arpeggiation and non-arpeggiation. On the one hand, it's a way of continuing to emphasize the chord change. On the other, it's a way of letting the ear hear two different chords in the last bar of page 3, the B-flat minor 13 in the harp, and the G-flat chord with a Lydian 4 in the strings. What about those hummed notes in the sopranos and the tenors? In the third bar of page 3, Boulanger writes sans nuance, in other words, without vibrato or crescendo. Here's another way that she treats the chorus as an orchestral section rather than a featured group of performers. Up above, the second flute and first clarinet pick up the doubling with seamless, overlapping notes. And what about that third horn note, that slightly pushed middle C back on page 1? That's been given to the English horn, but at piano to match the quieter string chords. At the end of the second episode, that little back-and-forth melody in fifths returns, but in a new way. First bassoons and flutes play a triple octave, doubled by celesta and second harp. Note the way that the harp part is written out. The harpist is playing a triple octave, but dividing the middle notes across 2 staves so that the hands can remain in one place, not jumping back and forth. The cymbal roll is marked triple P here, with timpani mallets, to create a sense of ongoing suspense under the meditative nature of this transition. But what about the strings and voice? Here we get into some innovative ideas in orchestration, one of those touches that shows that Boulanger's inspiration was as potent as Debussy and Ravel. The violins and violas taper off. They're not needed at all for this new texture. Instead, Boulanger creates this stack of fifths, double basses and cellos on the bottom, horns in the next octave, tenors and clarinets doubled above that, and on the very top, wordless soprano voices. It's pure magic the way the melody blends with this reinforcing background, tricking the ear into hearing things that aren't there. Well, I could go on and on about this score. There are just so many fantastic moments here, like the flute solo on pages 8 to 11, with a murmuring accompaniment of harp and tremolo strings. Or the passage after that, where pizzicato and arco strings in unison support the tenor solo. Or page 16, with its superbly balanced sul tasto strings, harp, and celesta making a cloudy cushion for the interweaving contrapuntal choral lines. Or the titanic sweeping finale. There's just so much to learn on every page of this score, for both beginning composition students and old hands like me. But I think that's a good enough start to go on for now. Tell you what, if I see over 100 likes on this video, then I'll make a follow-up that discusses more of these pages in detail. Until then, go to IMSLP, download the score, and do some of your own score reading along to the links I've provided. And once again, if you want to know more about the life of this incredible, forgotten composer, then please go to the Radio New Zealand website and have a listen to the audio before they take it down. That's all for now. See you soon.